About the important role that God played in his life. I heard these other superstar athletes with gold medals from the Olympics and from great sports backgrounds talk about the important role that God played in their life. And on a Sunday morning, I went into the chapel for the first time and I sat in the back row, and at the closing of it, this great chaplain named Mighty Max Jones said, "Man," he said, "you've heard all these witnesses." He says, "And let me say this to you. And I've been in over 2,500 prisons all over the world. I'm on my way to the Ukraine to teach them how to do prison ministry. I'm on my way to the Ukraine to go into prisons there, go into Moscow into prisons, go to Siberia and Africa, Honduras, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, all over the world I go." And I tell them what happened on that morning as I sat in the back row. And the old chaplain said this. He said, "Man, if today, the best that you can do today, the best that your attorneys and your family and your education can do today is you woke up in a prison cell and all you had was a prison outfit to put on, you're not managing your life very well. You need to be manageable." And I'm sitting in the back row and I'm thinking, that makes sense to me. I've got big attorneys. I've got a whole lot going on. But whatever I have, I don't have enough. I don't have enough to handle the situation I'm in. He said, "You come down here, I want to introduce you to a young man that was called a radical revolutionary, a troublemaker, an outlaw, and religious people playing religious games, put the money up to have him busted. And one of his buddies ratted him out. And he said, just like all you guys got arrested, this young man who wasn't managing your life, they arrested him, took him downtown, beat him beyond recognition. And even though the judge said, I don't find anything wrong with this guy, religious people playing religious games, which there's a lot of religious games going on all over the world, still today, said they put the heat on the judge, and the judge caved in, and they took this young man out, and they executed him on death row. And his name is Jesus. And he wants to manage your life." And I'm thinking, that's the craziest story I ever heard. That doesn't make any sense. What kind of story is that? He said, in every country in the world. And when I pull into Paris and Amsterdam and Kiev in the next couple months there, when I go into Moscow and to South Africa and all, I can't read the languages. I don't know, numbers are numbers. And it's 2017. What? 2017 years since that young man, Jesus Christ, rose up from the grave, and the world measures time either before or after his life. I never thought about that kind of stuff. But anyway, on that morning I stood up, and the big old black guy and I went down there, and that chapel was full of guys, and they said, "Look at these fools. What are these fools going to do?" What those fools did, Big Webb and Murf the surf went down, and we got saved. We just fessed out what everybody knew, that we were screwed up. That we didn't have the answers, and we needed some help, and we needed a new manager. Amen. We got saved. And I started the process. Just like a guy joining the military, or somebody buying a new computer, or someone learning to play an instrument. There's a process. I started that process of working it out. A few years later, I got shipped over next door to Rayford, the oldest prison in the state. And I had heard about this program called Kairos. Now, in the Episcopal and Catholic Church, they call it Cursillo. And other churches, they call it Walk to Emmaus. But there was a little confusion over what was happening in the prison, so they just changed the name to the Greek translation of Cursillo, which means a time set aside for God, or God's time. We call it Kairos. And I went to the program, and as part of God's plan for my life, a gentleman had pulled my name out of the hat, and his name was Neil Schweitzer. Somebody said, "Well, Neil's is an architect." I don't know what that means. But he builds birdhouses, or outhouses, and cabins, or whatever. I didn't know that this was Neil Schweitzer, the man who built 400 churches, who built the award-winning airport in Orlando. 40-some churches in the Orlando. I didn't know this was Frank Lloyd Wright's protege here. But that was part of God's plan. God does have a much better plan for your life. So along this journey going through the program, and part of the requirements to be a mentor, a sponsor in the program, you have to write every month a letter. And I would receive letters. I would receive cards from Nils as he was in cathedrals in France, or somewhere in Germany, encouraging, stuff that helped. But I had a whole lot of problems going on. And one of the problems that I had is that my partners and my people were involved in the big smuggling operations in South Florida, the big stuff. Not the little nickel bag of dope here. No, we're talking about freighters full of dope. I'm talking about guys with giant guys parachuting out of airplanes with 50 pounds of cocaine. I'm talking about farms in Mozambique and in Taiwan, the big stuff. And I'm running a narcotics operation in the penitentiary. And my goal every year was to make more money than the warden. That's the only way that my shanty pride could stay alive and deal with all those rednecks running the penitentiaries. At that time, the wardens were making $42,000 a year. And it was my goal every year to ace whatever they were doing with this narcotics, and I loved it. I loved that rock and roll. I loved that world that I lived in. I loved being able to walk down the hallway in that maximum security prison and the guys would step back. But something had happened when I asked this guy, Jesus Christ, to come into my heart and change my life. And I'm straddling this fence and struggling with this dilemma that something is happening in my soul, in my heart, in my mind. And I'm having trouble with this. And I got to the point, because now I'm going to the Kairos, and Nils is writing to me, and these other guys are writing to me. And so I got to the point that I said, you know, I've got two sons. My sons are almost 60 years old. I'm 80 years old. My sons are in Chicago, and they're businessmen and all. And I wanted, for some reason, there was something good taking place in my heart. And I wanted to buy them a Christmas present, just a sweater or something, with some money that didn't have dope all over it, that didn't have crime, it wasn't dirty money. You know, God does things like this in my world, but I didn't know how to do it. But I had been in an art class in prison. And I just went down there because it was neat, because some professors from the University of Florida were coming in, and we had this little group of guys, and we painted. We painted all sorts of different things, and every week we would go and we'd have coffee and have a critique, and the art was a form of escape. I could paint pictures of the beach, I could paint pictures of the waves and the birds and the boats and all. It was a way of getting out, and I had developed some skills with my art, and it was going along with. And so I'm going to a class on business, and the project in the class was to write some sort of a promotional, some sort of a sales report. So I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do my art thing, and I'll send these letters out to people who've bought my art, and I'll do a lighthouse. I'll do a couple of lighthouses, and I'll make this thing for a couple of months. Maybe I can get like $25 for a painting, because my stuff had been in art shows all over the state. And so I sent these letters out. And Nils bought a few paintings. And a couple other guys bought a few paintings. And then another guy bought a set of 12 paintings. And another guy. And what happened, God was moving in my life. Because at about the same time, my narcotics operation took a big bust, and some guys got busted and all. But now the art thing was rolling. So after I sold about 10 paintings, I said, this is enough, I'll double the price. So I doubled the price, up to $50 a painting. And the sales kept coming in. I said, uh-oh, it's driving me crazy. Every time I blink, I'm looking at lighthouses. So I put it to $100 a lighthouse, then to $200 a lighthouse, then to $400 for a lighthouse, the same size as these right here, an original. 450 paintings later, thousands of dollars later. I mean, this was God showing you that He had a better plan, a much, much, much better plan. ABC sent a news group in. The news group came in and did a program on a group that I was in with this older lady who took all the incorrigibles, all the bad guys, and she would bring in lawyers and media people and judges and the Women's League of Voters, college students and sheriffs and all, and we would sit with her group. And old Lucy, we all thought she was goofing on us because we didn't believe in anything she was doing. All of us were the front page guys. We were the headliners. We were the bad guys. And she'd come in and she'd say, boys, I got some chock full of nuts, coffee, and some cookies over there. Go get you some. Yeah, Lucy, yeah. And I looked around, and we were the bad guys. We were the guys who were going to die in prison. We were the guys with absolutely no heart. And then she said, okay, now look, I've got a big stack of Better Homes and Gardens magazines over here. Go over there and get you a couple magazines, and you've got your folders, and we have these little containers with glue in. Remember when you were a kid, you got that glue that you could eat as a kid? And we had these little scissors made out of plastic that you could, like kindergarten kids get. So then, here we have all these killers, all these bad guys, all these thugs. We'd have our glue and our scissors and some Better Homes and Gardens magazine, and she'd say, okay guys, now here, we sit down. About 35 of them. She said, today, we're going to design our dream bathroom. So go to the magazine and cut out what kind of shower you want, what kind of toilet and sink, what kind of things you want hanging in your bathroom. Yeah, Lucy, listen. Yeah. Glue our stuff in. And a couple weeks later, she said, now today, we're going to design our dream bedroom. The curtains, the bedspread, the pillows, the artwork, the lamps, everything. Yeah. Most of us were high when we went down there, you know, we're struggling with this God thing and all. But we did the thing. Highway 44 ends right up here. But on the other end of the state, Highway 44 ends in Crystal River. And I live in Crystal River next to a country club. And when you go into my bedroom, it's the room that I designed in Lucy's class. My bathroom is the room that I designed. But she believed in us when we didn't have a clue. She didn't look at us at the starting line, she looked at us at the finish line. And in the course of this growing and changing and all these things happening, I got very involved. As God pulled me out of these situations that I couldn't get out of, He pulled me out. See, a lot of people say, well, you got to do this, you got to... No, you can't. There's a lot of things we can't do. We are so in that cobweb, we can't get out of it. That's where the Lord comes along. So anyway, it comes down, this ABC comes in, and I meet this girl, and she starts writing, and then she got on my visiting list and visited me twice a week for over 12 years. She was a reporter with ABC, and her name is Kitten, and she's my wife, and whom I'm well pleased. And I left early this morning in our home over there, in my bedroom that I designed in old Lucy's class. And, but I was involved in the artwork. The art became a very important part of my life. And so I would paint pictures of the Key West line here. And at that time, they had a two-man submarine here that was captured in Pearl Harbor during the invasion there. There was a Spanish galleon right there. I would send Kitten down there, and she'd take pictures of this. So I'd paint it so it would be authentic. And then I studied about that. I didn't lecture on any one of these lighthouses here. But now I'm getting ready to come out of prison. Things are happening. As my life is changing, as the Lord is changing my heart, things around me are changing. And I teach this. I tell people, the world is much like a mirror. You can look ugly in the mirror, it won't change. But when you smile into the mirror will smile back. And when you change, and when you start smiling into the world and doing the right thing, then your life and your world starts changing. And finally, the parole board started moving, things started happening, and so I told Kitten, I would give her paintings, statues, put these away, so when I come out, I'll have something for re-entry. That's why we're here tonight. This is about re-entry. This is why we release every year 1,200,000 men and women from prisons, and in 30 days, 300,000 of them are back locked up because they can't get started. I've worked for 16 years at some correctional institution, and I'll pick guys up in prisons, and they'll have a check, maybe a couple $100. They can't even get it cashed because they don't have a bank account. And I'll say, well, listen, I've got a bank account. Well, you're not here. You're with Sunbank over there. That's no good. And so you're stuck. They're stuck in these dilemmas. I came out of prison, and I had Kid had all these big, I gave her a list of people. Mills bought some paintings. Some of the other Kairos guys bought some. But the thing is, it helped me get going. It helped me get some shoes and some socks and some basics that you've got to have. When you come out of prison and they give you $100 like Michael was talking about, what are you going to do with $100? You know, after you go down and you find out that you want to buy a pair of Levi's and they cost $25 and you go, wherever you go, you got a couple of, you need a beer. That's what you need. That's what you need. You're so frustrated and so screwed up. That's why 30% of the people coming out of prisons go back within 30 days. And what we're talking about here is helping people get started so they can break that particular curse. If you can make it 30 days, your chances, your odds are so much greater. If you have something to help you get down the road. In 6 months, 6 months, half the people are back in prison. 3 years, in 3 years, 70% of all people coming out of prison are back in there. Not because they want to go back, but just like Mike was talking. Try to get a job. Try to get I work with work release places. I work in centers all over the country. I work and it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. And because most people don't realize you can go to college and be at the head of your class, you're still going to have to go through a number of changes to get a secure job. I had some people put a new roof on our house over there. Guys were up there busting it, and they were paying them like $3.50, $4 an hour working up there. A guy with 4 kids and a wife and all, and he goes home with $185 for work in 5 days. Just, it's a shame. But anyway, by the time that I walked through that door, because of my artwork, I was able to have a few dollars to get it going, to get started. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about helping people to get it started. Now, I have a paper here that tells about these lighthouses. And whether you're selling, Kevin brought the surfboard in. I was doing a surfboard auction in Cocoa Beach a couple of years ago. And they were selling a surfboard up there, and their bid was going, they had their paddles up, and their bid was up to $750. And the guy was saying, going, I said, wait a minute. So let me tell you about that surfboard. And I told the story about this surfboard and the rider. And all of a sudden, instead of $750, it was $7,500 for that board because of the story that goes along with it. It's like a Picasso or a Van Gogh. The story that goes along with it has a great deal to do with the value of it. In Florida State Prison, at the end of the line, at the end of the hallway, downstairs, they have an electric chair called Old Sparky. But before Florida State Prison was built over at Rayford, the oldest prison in the state, they had the death house over there. And the death house was about on a yard, about this wide, about as long as this building right here. And it was an 18-foot high wall with a 14-foot fence up on top of it with razor wire up on top of that. With one gate down at the end to come in. And you walk down this hallway and there were 10 cells there where the condemned men were stationed before they went into the back room, which is where the electric chair was, where Old Sparky was. A very grim setting with a history that made your blood curdle. It was quite a, but they had moved the death house over to the Florida State Prison, and they made this room the band room. Because it was great. They had this great big wall around it, you know, the sound doesn't go. And I played in a Southern rock band called Truckload. All of us had life sentences, we had a truckload of time. Our lead singer was a big old mean Indian from North Carolina, and everybody in there, we were all, but we'd get up in the morning and we'd go down there for 5 years. I went down there. We'd put on those Stratocasters and that electric fiddle, and we would put it to work. We'd get busy. And then in the afternoon, we'd lay out in the yard and carry on. But I took one of those cells and made it my art gallery. And that's where I painted these pictures. That old death row cell. When I would practice in the morning, I stood right where the electric chair had been, where they'd cut it out. And I stood right there and practiced with the guys with the guitars and all. But these paintings here, I painted them in the afternoon in that old death house right there. And so I gave them to Kid and I said, save these. Save these because when I get out of prison, I didn't have a Lynn Brown or somebody to really encourage me or to help me, but I knew that I needed some help. I said, don't sell these. I'm going to give you a lot of other paintings. Sell those. And so I gave her a list of names. One of the names was Neil Schweitzer. Some of the other guys that worked in the Kairos program. And so she went out and she sold a whole lot of paintings. And I said, don't sell my lighthouses because I'm going to print them up. This is going to be my help here. She said, okay. So she came back and she said, wow, I got a couple $1,000. And I said, wow, super. She said, oh, and 3 of your lighthouses, I sold them. I said, what? Not my lighthouses. They're part of the set. She said, well, I had to. I took them to that man that you gave me his name, and I've got him and the officer has him at the door. He wants you to autograph him. I said, oh, Kenny. I said, I would say those. And she said, well, in my background, I've met a lot of people from various backgrounds and all. This particular name that I had given to her was a name that is in the history books. That when the Jewish mafia guys loaded up and made Las Vegas, then they went to Havana, Cuba, and they wanted to open the gambling in Havana, Cuba, but they needed a key person. And the key person was a man out of Tampa, Florida, who was the head of, and one of the major big associates with the American mafia. His name was Santo Traficante. And she had gone, I had worked with Santo at a time when he needed some work that he couldn't find in the Yellow Pages. And Mr. Santo had bought 3 of my lighthouses. What do you do with this? So I autographed them. I said, well, I can paint them again. I'll paint those pictures again. And so shortly thereafter, I got out of prison, and so I sent Santo a nice letter, and I said, listen, I'll come and paint them. Ceiling, I'll paint your garage, I'll paint everything. I said, those paintings, he said, okay, Murf. And so I painted him some large pictures to replace it, and I have those in my closet with the autographs on the back. So that's another story in this whole thing. So now I wanted to print these things. But it was going to cost me $16,000 to have these things printed. And I needed another $2,500 to paint, to produce some brochures with the pictures and all in them. So I went out and I worked and I was speaking here and there and I raised a couple $1,000. And so in my travels I meet a guy and he's a hotshot. He's buying race cars, he's buying expensive cars, he's buying big boats, he's buying airplanes. I don't know that he was busted by the FBI in California for big real estate problems. And the